Dunkirk, Dunkirk, Dutch pronunciation, Dunkirk, German, Dunkerchen, is a commune in the Nord department in northern France. It lies 10 kilometers from the Belgian border. The population of the city at the 2012 census was 90,995 inhabitants. Etymology and language use. The name of Dunkirk derives from West Flemish dun and kerke, which together means church on a hill. Until the middle of the 20th century, the city was situated in the French Flemish area. Today, the local Flemish variety of the Dutch language can still be heard, but has largely been supplanted by French. Nowadays, Dunkirk is the world's northernmost francophone city. History. Middle Ages. A fishing village in the originally flooded coastal area of the English Channel south of the Western Scheldt arose late in the 10th century, when the area was held by the Counts of Flanders, vassals of the French crown. About 960 AD, Count Baldwin III had a town wall erected, in order to protect the settlement against Viking raids. The surrounding wetlands were drained and cultivated by the monks of nearby Bergs Abbey. The name Dunkirk was first mentioned in a tithe privilege of 27 May 1067, issued by Count Baldwin V of Flanders. Count Philip I brought further large tracts of marshland under cultivation, laid out first plans to build a canal from Dunkirk to Bergs, and invested the Dunkirkers with market rights. When in the late 13th century the Dampierre Count Guy of Flanders entered into the Franco-Flemish War with his suzerain King Philip IV of France, the Dunkirk citizens sided with the French against their count, who first was defeated at the 1297 Battle of Furnes, but reached de facto autonomy upon the victorious Battle of the Golden Spurs 5 years later and exacted vengeance. Guy's son Count Robert III nevertheless granted further city rights to Dunkirk. His successor Count Louis I had to face the peasant revolt of 1323–1328, which was crushed by King Philip VI of France at the 1328 Battle of Cassel, whereafter the Dunkirkers again were affected by the repressive measures of their Lord Paramount. Count Louis remained a loyal linesman of the French king upon the outbreak of the 100 Years' War with England in 1337, and prohibited the maritime trade, which led to another revolt by the Dunkirk citizens. After the count had been killed in the 1346 Battle of Crecy, his son and successor Count Louis II of Flanders signed a truce with the English. The trade again flourished and the port was significantly enlarged. However, in the course of the Western Schism from 1378, English supporters of Pope Urban VI disembarked at Dunkirk, captured the city and flooded the surrounding estates. They were ejected by King Charles VI of France, but left great devastations in and around the town. Upon the extinction of the Counts of Flanders with the death of Louis II in 1384, Flanders was acquired by the Burgundian Duke Philip the Bold. The fortifications were again enlarged, including the construction of a Belfry des Marques. As a strategic point, Dunkirk has always been exposed to political covetousness by Duke Robert I of Bar in 1395, by Louis de Luxembourg in 1435 and finally by the Austrian Archduke Maximilian I of Habsburg, who in 1477 married Mary of Burgundy, sole heiress of late Duke Charles the Bold. As Maximilian was the son of Emperor Frederick III, all Flanders was immediately seized by King Louis XI of France. However, the Archduke defeated the French troops at the 1479 Battle of Guinegate, and when Mary died in 1482, Maximilian retained Flanders according to the 1482 Treaty of Arras. Dunkirk with Flanders was incorporated into the Habsburg Netherlands and upon the 1581 secession of the Seven United Netherlands, remained part of the southern Netherlands, which were held by Habsburg Spain as imperial fiefs. Privateer base. The area remained much disputed between Spain, the United Netherlands, England and France. At the beginning of the 80 Years' War, Dunkirk was briefly in the hands of the Dutch rebels. From 1577, Spanish forces under the Duke of Parma re-established Spanish rule in 1583, and it became a base for the notorious Dunkirkers. The Dunkirkers briefly lost their home port where the city was conquered by the French in 1646, but Spanish forces recaptured the city in 1652. In 1658, as a result of the long war between France and Spain, it was captured after a siege by Franco-English forces following the Battle of the Dunes. It was awarded to England in the peace the following year as agreed in the Franco-English alliance against Spain. It came under French rule when Charles II of England sold it to France for £320,000 on 17 October 1662. The French government developed the town as a fortified port. The town's existing defences were adapted to create 10 bastions. The port was expanded in the 1670s by the construction of a basin that could hold up to 30 warships with a double lock system to maintain water levels at low tide. The basin was linked to the sea by a channel dug through coastal sandbanks secured by 2 jetties. This work was completed by 1678. The jetties were defended a few years later by the construction of 5 forts: Château d'Espérance, Château Vert, Grand Risbon, Château Gaillard, and Fort de Revers. An additional fort was built in 1701 called Fort Blanc. The jetties, their forts, and the port facilities were demolished in 1713 under the terms of the Treaty of Utrecht. During the reign of Louis XIV, a large number of commerce raiders once again made their base at Dunkirk. Jean Bart was the most famous. The man in the iron mask was arrested at Dunkirk. The 18th-century Swedish privateers and pirates Lars Gyllenhielm and his wife and partner Angela Hammer are known to have sold their ill-gotten gains in Dunkirk. The Treaty of Paris between France and Great Britain included a clause restricting French rights to fortify Dunkirk, to allay British fears of it being used as an invasion base. Dunkirk. In World War I, the United States Navy established a naval air station on 1 January 1918 to operate seaplanes during World War I. The base closed shortly after the first armistice at Compiègne. Dunkirk. In World War II, in May 1940, during the Battle of France, the British Expeditionary Force in France aiding the French was cut off from the rest of the French army by the German advance. Encircled by the Germans, they retreated to the area around the port of Dunkirk. The German land forces could have easily destroyed the British Expeditionary Force, especially when many of the British troops, in their haste to withdraw, had left behind their heavy equipment. For years, it was assumed that Adolf Hitler ordered the German army to stop the attack, favoring bombardment by the Luftwaffe. However, according to the official war diary of Army Group A, its commander, General Oberst Gerd von Rundstedt, ordered the halt. Hitler merely validated the order several hours after the fact. This lull in the action gave the British a few days to evacuate by sea. Winston Churchill ordered any ship or boat available, large or small, to pick up the stranded soldiers, and 338,226 men were evacuated, the miracle of Dunkirk, as Churchill called it. It took over 900 vessels to evacuate the Allied forces, and although over two-thirds of those rescued embarked via the harbour, almost 100,000 were taken off the beaches. More than 40,000 vehicles as well as massive amounts of other military equipment and supplies were left behind, their value being less than that of trained fighting men. The British evacuation of Dunkirk through the English Channel was codenamed Operation Dynamo. 40,000 Allied soldiers were captured or forced to make their own way home through a variety of routes including via neutral Spain. The city was again contested in 1944, and the 2nd Canadian Infantry Division attempted to liberate the city in September, as Allied forces surged northeast after their victory in the Battle of Normandy. However, German forces refused to relinquish their control of the city, which had been converted into a fortress. and the garrison there was masked by Allied troops, notably 1st Czechoslovak Armoured Brigade. The fortress under command of German Admiral Friedrich Frischus eventually unconditionally surrendered to the commander of the Czechoslovak forces, Brigade General Alois Liska, on 9 May 1945. During the German occupation, Dunkirk was largely destroyed by Allied bombings. The artillery siege of Dunkirk was directed on the final day of the war by pilots from No. 652 Squadron RAF, and No. 665 Squadron RCAF. Post-war Dunkirk. On 14 December 2002, the Norwegian auto-carrier Tricolor collided with the Bahamian-registered Kariba and sank off Dunkirk harbour, causing a hazard to navigation in the English Channel. Climate. Dunkirk has an oceanic climate, with mild winters and warm summers. According to the Köppen climate classification system, Dunkirk has a marine west coast climate, abbreviated CFB, on climate maps. Summers are averaging around 21 degrees Celsius, being significantly influenced by the marine currents. Heraldry. Administration. The commune has grown substantially by absorbing several neighboring communes. 1970. Merger with Marlow-les-Bains. 1972. Fusion with Petite-Cinthe and Rosendale. 1980. Fusion association with Maerdijk. 1980. A large part of Petite-Cinthe is detached from Dunkirk and included into Grande-Cinthe. 2003. Project of fusion with Saint-Paul-sur-Mer. On 19 December 2003, the municipal councils of Dunkirk and Saint-Paul-sur-Mer decided in favor of a fusion association, which would create a new entity with a population of 94,187. The prefect requested a referendum, although this procedure was not mandatory. The referendum took place on 5 December 2004, actually covering 3 communes: Dunkirk, Saint-Paul-sur-Mer and Fort Maerdijk. Although the yes won with 54% of the votes, it did not gather 25% of the potential electorate, as required by the law. The prefect rejected the fusion proposal as a consequence. Economy. Dunkirk has the third largest harbour in France, after those of Le Havre and Marseille. As an industrial city, it depends heavily on the steel, food processing, oil refining, shipbuilding and chemical industries. Cuisine. The cuisine of Dunkirk closely resembles Flemish cuisine. Perhaps one of the best-known dishes is coq à la bière, chicken in a creamy beer sauce. Prototype meter. In June 1792, the French astronomers Jean-Baptiste Joseph de Lambry and Pierre-François-André Messiaen set out to measure the meridian arc distance from Dunkirk to Barcelona, 2 cities lying on approximately the same longitude as each other and also the longitude through Paris. The Belfry was chosen as the reference point in Dunkirk. Using this measurement and the latitudes of the 2 cities, they could calculate the distance between the North Pole and the equator in classical French units of length, and hence produced the first prototype meter, which was defined as being 1/10,000,000th of that distance. The definitive meter bar, manufactured from platinum, was presented to the French Legislative Assembly on the 22nd of June 1799. Dunkirk was the most easterly cross-channel measuring point for the Anglo-French survey, which used trigonometry to calculate the precise distance between the Paris Observatory and the Royal Greenwich Observatory. Sightings were made of signal lights at Dover Castle from the Dunkirk Belfry, and vice versa. Tourist attractions. The Musée Portuaire displays exhibits of images about the history and presence of the port. The Musée des Beaux-Arts has a large collection of Flemish, Italian and French paintings and sculptures. The Carnival of Dunkirk. The Tour du Lefanair. The Church Saint Eloi. Dunkirk Town Hall, Carnival in Dunkirk, Marlow-les-Bains beachfront, transport. Dunkirk has a ferry connection which does not accept foot passengers with Dover, England. The Gare de Dunkirk railway station offers connections to Gare de Calais-Ville, Gare de Lille-Flandres, Arras and Paris, and several regional destinations in France. The railway line from Dunkirk to De Panne in Adinkerke, Belgium, shown on major online maps, is not used by passenger trains. Foot passengers have to go to Gare de Calais-Ville for a connection on P&O ferries to reach Dover. Sports. USL Dunkirk, French football club, currently playing in the CFA. The 4 Days of Dunkirk is an important elite professional road bicycle racing event. Stage 2 of the 2007 Tour de France departed from Dunkirk. Notable residents: Jean Bat, naval commander and privateer; Robert Malm, footballer; Jean-Paul Rouve, actor; François Rosenthal, ice hockey player; Maurice Rosenthal, ice hockey player; Juman Sangare, footballer; Tancred Valery, writer. International relations. Twin towns, sister cities. Dunkirk is twinned with Friendship Links. Dunkirk has cooperation agreements with Dartford, England since March 1988, Thanet, England since 18 June 1993.